All right, that was long. All right, I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 16th. As you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'm sorry, what's that again?
A motion to adopt the agenda, sorry.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All right, I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn? Yes. Ms. Franklin? Yes. Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass? Yes. Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address. We have the option to extend in 30-minute increments. Ms. Drake will remind us of those increments. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business meeting and hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions, so the more disruptions there are, the fewer speakers that get to address the board. I will call each speaker up by name in the order they signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address. The screens will show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when time is up. Please state your name, the area of the county where you live. Our first speakers are Jenna Nichols and Glenn Chilcote. Jenna? Okay. Sure. Yeah. Or actually, are we up there? Yeah, sorry, up at the lectern. Yep.
Thank you all for letting me speak tonight. I am Jenna Nichols from the Christiansburg area near Mount Pleasant Road, and my family and I have lived here for almost 10 years. Our kids go to Falling Branch Elementary, Christiansburg High School, and unfortunately, Christiansburg Middle School. I understand that being in any position in the public school is very hard, and I'm thankful for the individuals who do devote their careers to educating and supporting our children in a proper manner. However, that is not going on everywhere, including Christiansburg Middle School. I've sent a very long list of the multiple grievances from Christiansburg Middle School this year involving the administration to your superintendent. If you would like to see it, I also have copies. Among the several things in that email, I want to boil it down tonight to one, which involved one of our sons, who is a 7th grader at Christiansburg Middle School. He was in the locker room, unsupervised by any coaches or adults in any way. Children were horseplaying around. He bumped into someone who got very upset and had his friend beat my son up to the point that he lifted him over his head and body slammed him to the floor. He reached his arm down to try to support himself, and he broke his arm. We were called to the nurse's office about this, where they were explaining to us what was going on, and there was a clear deformity in his arm. We took him to an urgent care orthopedist, where he now remains in a cast for the rest of the year, for the rest of the school year, and part of the summer. The principal did talk to us about it. They did find that this was what happened, and that the 2 coaches who were supposed to be overseeing the locker room were in their office. When my son went to them when it happened, they told him he should go see the nurse. So now in talking to Mr. Hipple, there is coaches in there at all times. However, horseplay and roughhousing do still go on, as we were talking to Mr. Hipple and the SRO about last week, because our son was continuously getting shoved around and punched by students of that boy, friends of that boy. To update you as of today, this morning, a student ran up to my son, grabbed his cast, and jerked it off of his arm. So tomorrow he will be missing school to go back to the orthopedist to make sure it is not fractured or damaged more to the point of surgery, and likely to get a new cast. When Mr. Hipple called me about that today, he said he didn't see on cameras this happen, and he didn't believe that the cast would come off of my son's arm, so my son was not telling the truth. When he got home, we checked it, and very easily you can move the cast back and forth, and with force from a student, it would definitely come off. I know, like I said, things involving children in public schools is very hard. However, the administration at Christiansburg Middle School is not doing their job to keep them safe. They are not enforcing rules of things, to give a little bit of a highlight, porn being shown on the school bus multiple times this year by CMS students. Students on the bus saying that students who are gay should kill themselves, which was also reported to the school and nothing done about it.
Ms. Nichols, your time is up, but
Okay.
you can finish your sentence because the clock came up a little bit late.
I will just sum it up with something needs to be done at Christiansburg Middle School. It's been a problem, very much so this year for me and other parents, and it's something you should consider seriously.
Thank you.
Email?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Next up is Glenn Chilcote, and after that is Don Upham.
Glenn Chilcote, I live in Blacksburg. Good evening. I'm here to speak tonight about the budget, and I am representing the Montgomery County Education Association. And this is probably the last time that I'll be speaking in front of you as president of the MCEA. I will still be very involved in the organization. It's very important to me, but I am stepping down as president. My term ends August 1st. Katie Seidemann is our new president, but I will still be staying on as the collective bargaining chair, and I look forward to doing that work. But in regard to the budget, I appreciate a lot of your comments about last time. I rewatched the meeting this afternoon, and of course, I share your disappointment, but what's done is done, and I don't have a lot of power to fix what the Board of Supervisors do. So I'm here to offer some recommendations that I really hope you all take very seriously. And first off, with the raises, I really do think it's important that our employees receive a 5% raise. I know Governor Youngkin has set a 7% raise, and that would be ideal, but 5% is something that we advocated for in February, and I think that's very important. However, I would like to say that 5% needs to be 5%, and I don't understand why we even have a salary scale if we're not honoring the steps. So for the last 6 or 7 years, every single year, when we're told we're getting this percentage raise or nothing at all, every employee looks at the current scale. They look at the next step. If they're on step 18, they look at step 19. And then they add what the percentage is told to that step, because that seems like the logical thing. Okay, I have 19 years experience. Next year I have 20. That's what I'm making. The raise, I add the percentage to that year 20 amount. And that's not the case this year. What happens, and what's happened for the last 5 or 6 years, is that we have a salary scale. The percentage is added to the salary scale, the numbers are erased, and then they're re-added. So step 15 with the 5% is now step 16. So you don't go to that next step. And I can't tell you how many emails I had today to explain to people, even after the 5 or 6 years, when they don't realize that they're not getting that step, and they feel that that should be a kind of a guarantee. So if you can add the steps and that system back in, that would be something that I think a lot of the employees, or all of the employees, would appreciate. Secondly, when it comes to health insurance, I understand that we're in quite a predicament, but any increase in out-of-pocket expenses for health insurance for employees is a reduction in salary, point blank. And lastly, I only have 20 seconds, but it's just really frustrating to have a job where I have to stand up here every year or go to the Board of Supervisors and beg. It is really frustrating that I can't do a good job and get a raise. My principal can't say, Glenn, I am so proud of your hard work. We're gonna make sure that that happens. It doesn't work that way, and that's disappointing.
Thank you, Mr. Chilcote. Next up is Don Upham, and after that, Christopher Thomas.
Different arrangement this evening. I'm Don Upham. I live in Reiner, and I'm trying to get my phone to come up with what I'm speaking here tonight. This is a reading from a former textbook that's no longer used in most schools. It actually comes from the book of the Psalms, Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day it utters speech, and night unto night it reveals knowledge. There is no speech, no language where their voice is not heard. Their measuring line has gone out throughout all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, which like a bridegroom coming out of its chamber, and it rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than the honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them your servant is warned, and in keeping them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors and cleanse me from secret faults? Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless, and I shall be innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
Thank you, Mr. Upham. Next up, we have Christopher Thomas.
Members of the board, we have a somewhat thinner registry today, so I don't have quite as many remarks prepared as I usually would, but I understand you've pulled together a budget given the constraints placed upon you by the Board of Supervisors. And while I admire your professionalism and your willingness to work within the constraints of the problem before you, I think you may be about to make a terrible mistake. As many members of this community have noted, the BOS budget cuts appear to be ideologically motivated. This board made a number of decisions that our supervisors very publicly disagreed with, and then those same supervisors voted to cut the school budget over the loud and unified protests of our entire community. It's difficult to read those cuts in any other way. Members of the board, you need to understand how this is going to look and how it's going to play out. Following a vote to allow collective bargaining, our Board of Supervisors cut funds to the schools. If this board does its best to minimize the disruption those cuts cause, it will allow the Board of Supervisors to punish our teachers for unionizing, demanding they teach more students with fewer resources for less money. Yes, even with a 5% raise, because inflation is a bear. And what thanks will the board get for that Herculean effort? Well, you'll get future cuts. I mean, how could you not, right? After the Board of Supervisors cuts your funding, they'll tell themselves that they have successfully lowered the cost of education to Montgomery County taxpayers, and the school board made do with those reduced cuts. So clearly, the $6 or so million shortfall that you'll be facing was actually money you were going to just waste, that you didn't actually need that money to educate our students, that it was all being spent on, and we'll wave our hands here and pretend that we had to come up with an answer when, of course, no one ever does. It's just hard decisions and difficult choices. And so next year you'll face another $6 million shortfall, and you'll have to find some more positions to cut, some more things to not do, and another one after that, another one after that, until the cost of the cuts becomes unbearable for the tax base of the supervisors themselves. These cuts must have an impact. They must be visible. If we merely allow them to constantly increase the strain on and difficulty that our teachers face, then you are placing the cost of those cuts on our teaching professionals and on no one else. I hate to say it, but members of the board, the place that these cuts must fall must be in places that are intensely visible. And they must be intensely visible specifically to the county as a whole, but also to the individual areas of the county that most support the kind of tax policies that have brought about the position we now find ourselves in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right, seeing no one else signed up, public address is closed. Next on our agenda is approval of consent items. If no one wishes to pull an item from consent agenda, we will consider all items approved on consent. I'd like to say thank you to Sheila for the $3,000 donation to Bellevue Elementary School. All right, moving on, next item is payment of the bills. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn? Yes. Ms. Franklin? Yes. Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson? Yes. Ms. Cass? Yes. Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the financial summary report as presented?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass? Yes. Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, next we move on to the business meeting, and we'll start with a report from Superintendent. Dr. Bregan, it's yours.
Thank you, Board Chair Chewbacca. I only got a few things to speak of tonight. One is that I had the pleasure of attending last week, I think it was Wednesday night, the retirement dinner for our employees who are retiring from the county. It was hosted by Virginia Tech, at the inn at Virginia Tech, and kudos to Danny Nod and Melanie Cox and the entire HR team for putting that together and giving us an opportunity to recognize all the years of service that our employees have dedicated to Montgomery County and our public schools. It totaled 1,022 and a half years of service. And when you think about that number, I know as a superintendent, it kind of frightens me because it's going to take us a really long time to hire people of that caliber, that level of expertise to work with our young people. And every time, you know, one person leaves, it's a deficit of institutional and expertise for the division. And the fact that 1,022 and a half years of service have walked out the door, it's going to take us a long time to recover from that. So it was an opportunity to honor those people. It's also something that's a concern for me as we hire new people. It takes a while for people to get up to speed and to have that level of that skill set. Teaching is an art and a science, and it takes many years to perfect it, to do it at a level that we expect. And it was great that we got to honor them. I hate to see them go, and I told them this when we spoke, that I hope they come back and visit us and spend time with us and maybe sub or offer their time and their expertise. And I said to them, I'll know when I see the retirees, because when they walk in the building, they have those really big smiles, and they've earned them. So that was a great night. The other thing I would like to speak about is the culmination of all the efforts of this Board of Education, previous boards, and everything that we do in the division is our graduation of our seniors. And this week, we are graduating our seniors at our 4 high schools. I plan to attend each graduation and looking forward to seeing our graduating seniors walk across the stages. This Friday at East Montgomery High School, it's at 6 p.m. And then on Saturday, we have the 3 other graduations. Blacksburg High School is at 9 a.m. Christiansburg High School will be at 1 p.m. and Auburn High School will be at 4 p.m. And then the last thing is, I talked to the board chair about this, that I was thinking about putting something together, a state of the schools or some type of address like that. You know, after 6 months in the position, what are some of the things that we feel we're doing really well, and maybe some of the things we can enhance and even improve upon. So I'm going to present something formally at our next Board of Education meeting. I believe that's the first week in June, and look forward to doing it. Thank you, Board Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bregan. Next on the agenda is the federal grant application review. This is, I think, the applications for review, first reading, if you will, and they'll be brought back to us in June for approval. Does anyone have any questions regarding the grant applications? Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the budget update.
My Board Chair, I'm going to ask, after a brief introduction, Dr. Whitaker and her team to present on the budget update. I know you heard some of the conversation tonight about the cuts that we experienced from the Board of Supervisors and how our proposals were to address those. I also want to correct, I said Board of Education twice. It's the school board. I need Ms. Drake or someone next to me to kick me when I say that. It's been so ingrained in New Jersey, and I apologize. I got to get that out of my head. But, you know, this is a real serious matter. When we heard a few people speak tonight, as well as I know this board is committed to doing all they can to provide the superlative education programs that we do in Montgomery County. And anytime we have a cut in what we thought was a fair and appropriate budget to do all the things that we need to continue the programs we have and build upon those to make them even better, you know, the Board of Supervisors reduced it by a significant amount. Dr. Whitaker will talk specifically about that, but $3.6 million or thereabouts. And then the funding from the State Department of Education was reduced about another $800,000. So that was a $4.5 million deficit that we had to make up. So the charge that we were given and what we tried really hard to do on the team was, how do we do that with the least amount of impact for students in the classroom? And to still do, as Mr. Chilcote and others have said, and this board is committed to giving the staff the raises that they so deserve and they require. So we think we came up with something. It's never easy. It's never something that we're proud of and say, look, here's all the cuts we had, because that's always difficult. But we tried to be really respectful of our programs and our people, and this is what we put together. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Whitaker, and if you need anything from me, just ask.
All right, thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, all right. Is that better? There we go. All right, there we go.
Turn off the rain, Brenda. And plus, the sound level was kind of low, so I was really struggling when Dr. Bragan was talking.
My husband always tells me I talk too loud into the microphone, so if I get a message, it's him telling me I'm too loud. Okay. I did want to start by echoing Dr. Bragan. These are never easy decisions. You know, our desire would have been to have the budget that we moved forward be able to be approved. These are not easy decisions. The team worked diligently. I did want to share that Ms. Miano is not here this evening, and that's because tonight is the Virginia, tonight it is part of the VASBO conference, which is the Virginia Association of School Business Officials, and Ms. Miano has actually been elected to be president next year, and so she's being sworn in tomorrow, and that is why she is not here tonight. So tonight we're going to provide you information regarding the budget before you. First, we're going to provide you a reminder of the original budget request that we moved forward. We'll talk through how we addressed the budget reduction, or what those numbers in the budget reduction were, and then our approach to the budget reduction. We're going to provide you the updated operating budget, and then our school nutrition program budget as well. Two separate items on the agenda you'll see after that are the approval of both of those budgets, and then also of the scales that are connected to the budget that we're presenting to you. So the first slide that we have here for you is the funding and request that was approved by this board on February 7th. You see at the bottom at that time, our additional request to the board was $6.1 million. And so this is just to remind you kind of where we're starting from. You'll continue to see this information as we provide you the final budget. So in terms of the budget reduction, this slide has two sides. The county is on the left, and then the state funding is on the right. So as a reminder, our original ask with the county funding was $62 million. What was approved was $58,429,000. That left us with a deficit of $3.65 million. In terms of our state funding, we got the original calc tool, and that stated that we would get $71 million. The skinny budget is the revised budget, and in that budget, our ADM numbers had then been collected in March, and so the student enrollment came down. Now, this deficit gave us about $874,000. In typical years, what happens is we get more funding at the end as opposed to less based upon enrollment, but because those numbers came down, what we wanted to do is to make sure to take care of it up front so we wouldn't get through the year and then have to make cuts if the numbers came in based upon that ADM enrollment. And so what you see is the total deficit is $4,525,623. When beginning the conversation on a very difficult job of making a budget reduction, we wanted to first re-examine and prioritize the original budget goals that we had given to you for the 23-24 school year. So we'll go through those original budget goals one by one on the next slide. We wanted to minimize the impact to instruction by maintaining our pupil-teacher ratio to the greatest extent possible. We wanted to utilize attrition to reduce staffing so that we could, as much as possible, not have to let anybody go, but when vacancies came open, move people so that nobody was losing a position. And then we wanted to focus on building level management of staff being assigned to schools. And what we mean by that is principals supervising the people in their buildings, which requires less supervision from central office staff. So the impact of the reduction, I apologize that the red box is up there. You're going to see two sides. The left side here is going to be what remains. So again, these were our budget goals that we had set originally. So originally, we wanted to support those student athletic safety needs for our athletes by hiring 4 full-time athletic trainers. Those full-time athletic trainers have remained in the budget. Increasing access to preschool by adding an additional classroom at Auburn Elementary School. Increasing pay for all employees utilizing funding for SOQ positions in addition to the local match, and that is a 5% raise for all employees. And we had at that time a 1% retention bonus. You'll see on the right the retention bonus was removed. And then that salary corrections for individual staff as identified in the salary study that we discussed previously. And then implementation of a new placement process for our administrative assistants. Finally, we wanted to increase custodial staffing based on the building size by adding 4 additional custodians. Each of those items in green did remain in the budget. We needed to address the needs of our self-funded. We did address that, but we had to reduce the amount that we were putting into the self-funded. New items that we have cut from the budget request are, while we're continuing to ensure that we have goals aligned with the strategic plan, there were positions and roles spoken to within the strategic plan that were reduced within the budget we're moving forward to. Supporting the student mental health needs by adding 2 additional school counselors. Those positions were removed, but Dr. Wickham is going to speak to you about an alternative to provide student mental health supports so that we will be able to still provide increased access to our students. The 1% retention bonus, that was removed from the budget altogether. So, that came to us from the state, and so we removed that because it was removed when it got to us. We had added 6.5% increase for services, for supplies and materials, and we removed that inflation increase. And then there was $250,000 that had been added to pull positions paid through ESSER funds over into the regular operating budget, and those have been removed as well. That did not get us where we needed to be. And so we still had additional budget reductions that we needed to look at. And you're going to see these in 3 different categories. The first is eliminate. So we are eliminating the funding of students' school supplies. What we mean by this is, you'll remember a couple years ago, we started having a very little list of supplies that parents needed to purchase. And we were able to let our teachers purchase those directly from their classroom for those students. And so we have eliminated that. We have eliminated paying, or are proposing eliminating paying for Virginia educator licensing fees. It is a benefit that we provide to our employees. I've not seen any other school district do that, but that is something that we put as an elimination from the budget.
How much is that, Amy?
$10,000.
How much per person?
$50. It's $50 per person, and every 10 years they pay that fee. Reducing division-provided cell phones so that only those individuals who are emergency personnel would need to have a phone to respond to an emergency. Staffing reductions, 6.5 central office administrative positions. Again, I want to note that these are through attrition. 1 school-based administrative position, or let me say the reassignment of staff is through attrition. 6.5 central office administrative positions, 1 school-based administrative position, 3 administrative assistant positions, 6 elementary teaching positions, and 3 secondary teaching positions. And then increasing the employee contribution to health insurance premiums. That is not something that we've done, I believe, since I've been an employee in Montgomery County. And those are the additional budget reductions that got us to the number that we needed to be at. What you see before you here is the information that shows the previous budget that we had sent forward before. It shows the reductions. That top section there is the original. Below the gray line is the new, the reductions that we just discussed. And then it shows the total annual budget for next year that we are requesting of $134,940,673. These are the categories in which those funds would be approved. And I'm going to stop right there before we get to school nutrition budget, Dr. Bragan, unless you'd like me to go through those as well first.
Perfect. Nope.
Okay. And I'm sure there are questions.
I do have is there one we're doing questions?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, sir. Talk to me about the CALC tool. So are they planning at all to reimburse schools for their mistake?
I have not seen that. So we have gotten no indication that that's happening.
Nor have they expressed any sense of urgency to move forward with it. You know, we've heard repeatedly from the legislators, we already created a biennial budget. There's no need for us to rush back and do anything until June. So I don't see that, but again, we don't know that.
Okay.
And go ahead, yeah, Mark, you can speak.
So their correction is kind of why they put out the skinny budget. It shows where they are without any correction, just the amount you'd be funding, and that's what the skinny budget is. So if they do no more actions or no more sessions, that's the budget from them.
It's still $874,903, almost $1 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot
Yes.
for a mistake for each school division.
Well, let me clarify, that $874,000 that you're seeing on this slide here, that is based upon our enrollment differences.
Right, sure.
I've got 2 questions, just to clarify a couple of the items on here. In terms of the cell phones, aside from the emergency ones that you're retaining, what other staff are losing cell phones, I guess, as a result of this?
So we have a lot of cell phones out there, so it would be our cell phones and then also Wi-Fi that would be attached to products that, you know, say iPads or things like that. So individuals that myself, you know, I could be considered obviously an emergency personnel, but I would give up my phone because I feel like if others are, I need to do that as well. So it's probably easier to say who would keep them. You know, it's going to be people who.
I'd like to know who has them.
Oh,
I think that's what Lynn was.
who has them. So right now, it's a variety. So we have it from administrators, school-based administrators, assistant principals, depending on your role. You know, our directors have phones, but then we have some of our leads, our custodial lead people would have that in our strands. Our buildings, our facilities folks who need to respond in the middle of the night to, those would be emergency personnel, you know, the people who need to respond if we have a flood or we have a fire. It depends on the administrative assistant. Some of them do have a phone based upon who they support and whether or not that person is an emergency support person. There are very few of those.
Just out of curiosity, what is our cell phone bill?
$100,000 a year.
There's a lot of people who have cell phones.
Yeah.
And I've asked about, many years, I've inquired, why do we have so much of that kind of stuff out? Because I remember when Brenda Blackburn was here, and I was asking, isn't that a way we can kind of cut money? Well, you know, we get a kind of a deal and this and that, and so I didn't ask for it, but I've asked multiple times about phones and iPads and services and all that kind of stuff, because any money saved is savings, in my opinion.
And the second question, help me understand the inflation of 6.5% across those different categories there, like.
So the way we originally came up with that calculation is we took the amount we were spending and we added 6.5% to it. We really just said, things have gone up, the inflation across our country is 6.5%. And so we took the amount we spent this year and we increased it by 6.5%. So the reality is, yes, that will mean, as things have increased, and if we're not able to account for that, then there will have to be, folks will need to be mindful in their spending because things are certainly getting more expensive.
Doesn't that mean that we'll be buying less of what we need?
Yes.
And
Hidden
we can
costs in
maybe
there, right?
do that for a year, but that's not, I look at that as something that's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not, I would agree with you 100%. It's not something in the past where we've done each year added for inflation, which we probably should have. And so I'm not saying that, I'm just looking to say, it's not a standard that each year we've increased it. It was something we were looking to do so that we could set a good role for understanding and looking at how things were going to, what the costs were going to look like. But yeah, we wanted to get ahead of inflation by doing it. But because it was not a standard that we had done in the past and we were looking for places to make cuts, that was one of the ones when we went down the list we did pick. But Mr. Trabaka, you're right. It does mean that if things cost more and we don't have more to spend, then we can't buy all of the things we were buying before.
I have another question, different topic. I don't know if oh, there it goes. The 6 elementary teaching positions.
Dr. Wickham is going to address that question for you.
So we actually held on to some extra positions this year, even though PTR in some of the classrooms were low, thinking that we would have more students return after the pandemic, after things settled out. But the positions that will be cut in this, first of all, it'll be through attrition. And some of the numbers that we're looking at, 10 students in a classroom, 14 students in a classroom, those are the class sizes that will go up. We do have a handful at the elementary level that are quite low. We just haven't had the students return that we thought would.
Is that in a particular, is that like spread out amongst the schools, or is it in one particular area, or?
It's spread out amongst schools.
So I have a question along that line. So we never fully recovered from the teachers that we lost in 2008, 2009, correct? So now we're losing even more teachers?
I think we did, at least at one point, get to where we were evened out. We weren't ahead, so we never got ahead from the pandemic, which we should have been. But now we're almost back to where we got even with before 2008, and that's wrong.
I thought we were pretty much back in that, because we then started adding some of those like lunch assistant, not assistant, some kind of
Recess
elementary.
aides.
Recess aides.
Yes, thank you. So I thought we had. Do we have any schools? So are most of our schools full? I guess be the word I would use. Are our schools full?
We do have capacity in some schools more than others. So, Shawsville has more room in those schools than our Blacksburg schools do. We do have more capacity certainly at some schools. Some schools are more full. Blacksburg High School is pretty full. So based upon the school, there is capacity in some places, yes.
Like, how much capacity?
Shawsville Middle School has quite a bit of capacity, so they have a lot of space. Do you want me to answer those ones? Okay. Shawsville Middle School has quite a bit of capacity. Eastmont High School has capacity as well. Dr. Wickham, in terms of Auburn, how do you feel about that?
So Auburn Elementary School, they're pretty tight. Our 2 larger schools, they're pretty tight. Eastmont Strand, like you said, Eastmont Elementary School, a lot of space there.
I will throw out a very unpopular opinion, but I think it needs to be thrown out. So we have 3 schools that are half full? Is that a?
I'd say for Shawsville Middle, probably so, yeah.
And then we've got the other strands, full schools. Is there something we could do to possibly save money?
You're saying redistricting?
I'm not saying redistricting.
I don't know how else to move the kids without changing their districts.
Could you not have a elementary school that is like K through 7 and a high school that's 8 through 12 or something like that, where you have two brand-new school, relatively brand-new schools? I guess now they're not brand new, but I mean, they're compared to Shawsville Middle School, everything is brand new because it's the oldest school we have. I mean, and it's an old school that is not in great shape, but that's probably going to require a fair amount of investment to make it into something that's inhabitable for a longer period of time.
Yeah, we're doing quite a bit of work, right now. So on our list for Shawsville Middle School, there are quite a few repairs that we are putting money into right now. In terms of, can we do that? Of course, at Dr. Bragan's direction, we could study anything that you all, or your direction, anything that you would like us to. I do believe there is a requirement for a process from the state when you consolidate schools. So I would have to do a little bit more research to see if we could get it done in time, if that was the will of the board. But when you are closing and opening schools, there are some requirements from them. So in terms of the budget, we have to have that approved to issue salaries. So something like that might, if that was your hinging factor, might delay the release of contracts. But it is certainly something that we could study if you wanted us to.
My big concern with that is the loss of all those teachers.
My concern with that,
as a loss
my
of
concern with that is that that's a community that we're saying we don't value enough to have a middle school. And when that conversation happened before, that is what parents showed up and stated. Also, that especially the fathers stating they did not want their 7th grade daughters in the high school. And I absolutely agree with that because I was in that situation before we had middle schools in this community, and some of the things that happened with that situation should not have happened.
You do K through 8?
So we're gonna do that in every district, every community?
No, I'm just saying, you know what? We need, there's a lot of issues out there, and I understand that, but I also understand that we've got 3 half-empty schools that we're paying a lot of money for to keep them up and running. And I'm not saying reducing teachers, because if you move the students to these other schools, teachers are still needed. So no teachers are losing jobs. That is not what I'm considering. I'm thinking about the building operations themselves. You've got 2 really strong functional buildings that have been built recently, and then you've got one that is in dire need of a lot of work.
We've got lots of schools in the district like that.
I know we do, and so, Penny, I just think you sometimes have to think outside the box when you're trying to solve a problem.
Let me step in here and say, I understand what you're saying, and I think that is, to me, that is a conversation that could be had, and there are certainly some things about that that are negative, but depending on the numbers and depending on what the projections are, it is at least something that shouldn't be ignored just out of hand. But I do also think that that's not something we're going to solve with this budget, so I appreciate you bringing it up, and I do think it's something that we need to talk about. And this is what I said last time too about the Board of Supervisors. To some degree, I give them some credit that they're doing their job. They say they're representing their constituents. We can say they are or they're not, but they're getting reelected.
They just shut down the Shawsville First Aid Squad.
And so all I'm saying is, I don't think it hurts to have these conversations so that people understand what it costs to have 4 different community areas in the city. That comes with a price tag. And at some point, if we're not going to get funded and we're having to make another $500,000 cut here or there, maybe we do need to have that conversation.
It does feel like we're back in 2009, 2010, making
But
these decisions.
but anyway, I want to try to, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I do want to try to focus us back on.
I think it'd be interesting just to see the numbers. I'm not saying that we should go full steam ahead, but I mean, I don't know. Is it save $10,000? Then, no, it's not worth it. To save $1 million? That's, then is that, what's the limit? I don't know. But it would be interesting to just know. I mean, I'm not trying to take away education or make it a difficult, I want to continue giving these students a good environment to work in too.
So Penny, you were going to say something, I think, before.
Oh, yes,
Sue
let's
had, yeah.
start.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So I have some real concerns about the cuts that have been made and how they have been made and the processes that were done as to make those decisions and who made those decisions. And when we talk about focusing on building level administration and staff, are we saying that some of the positions that were cut at central office, those responsibilities are now going to be put back onto principals?
Some, yes, and directors.
Okay, so these were some of the questions that I would like to have had answered last week when I talked to each of my fellow board members and suggested that we have a meeting last week to be able to have a lot of questions answered. And that didn't happen. So there's going to be a lot of questions asked tonight about the whole process.
Okay.
So putting more responsibility on building administrators, I'm not sure how that is going to work and still be able to have the level of effectiveness that we have in the buildings and to make sure that we are covering all the duties and responsibilities that are being eliminated so that they don't fall through the cracks and so that we don't end up with civil rights complaints and the state looking at us because we have disproportionate discipline issues going on in the district related to African American and brown students. Let's see. So with the cuts, so we're basically trashing a huge portion of the strategic plan.
I don't believe we're trashing.
That the community came together and said, these are things that are important and that are needed. And hundreds of people came together to make these suggestions and recommendations to the board.
Ms. Franklin, what part of the strategic plan are we trashing? Because I don't believe we're trashing any of it.
Staffing,
There's 2 staffing positions. One is identified particularly.
counselors for mental health.
I want to answer that. One position is identified specifically in the Administrator of Professional Development. And those responsibilities, I'm sorry?
I said there were 2 positions.
There's one that's specifically identified by that, unless I misread the plan, and I'll be more than happy to reread it. But nonetheless, that position and those responsibilities are going to be taken over by our Curriculum and Instruction Assistant Superintendent and delegated to the Directors of Elementary and Secondary, and with some of that falling on the principals. And we do believe that can be done without any compromise in the professional development that's offered and the training that we will provide for our staff. The other position that you referred to is not specifically identified by name or title in the strategic plan, unless I misread it, is the Director of Discipline, I believe. Is that what it's called? I'm sorry. I got that wrong. The Administrator of Family Engagement. And the other one wasn't identified by title, right?
The one that was identified by title was the Administrator of Professional Development, and the other one just
Austin, okay.
specifically spoke to roles they would fulfill.
Correct. I apologize. But, so there was one I knew that was identified. So the one that's also identified as the Administrator of Family Engagement, we did think, again, I wasn't here then, but from what I got from our staff was that that was important during the time of COVID, that we didn't want to make sure we had people going out to the homes and, getting kids that were disengaged and connected into our society as the classes were remote and online. And I'm not saying that that's not a need, but at this point, there's not that pressing need that we need a dedicated administrator solely responsible for doing that, that some of those responsibilities will fall on some of our other administrators and support personnel that can do that, because the need is no longer as great as it was then. So those 2 positions, while important, I don't think in any way by us making these changes, we're compromising the strategic plan or moving away from it.
So I have to disagree because
Okay.
it wasn't just COVID that we had families that were in need and students who needed extra support and families that needed extra support. That's been going on as long as I've been in Montgomery County, and that's all my life. And the fact that as the years have gone on, it's become more and more recognized that that's something we need to step up and do. It's needed.
No one's arguing it's not needed. The argument was, one, it's an ESSER-funded position, ESSER's money's going away, and two is whether we need a dedicated administrator solely responsible for that. No one's saying the need isn't there. I'm saying it isn't as pervasive that would require one dedicated administrator solely for that, as we see it.
So ESSER funds were taken from this position and added to other positions that were created.
I'm not sure what was added, what ESSER funds were added.
There was an administrator at Christiansburg Middle School that was.
Oh, and it wasn't added in this budget.
And that was, I was told that was being paid for through ESSER funds.
There are still some funded positions through ESSER's, but we didn't add any positions to this budget.
This is the 23-24 budget.
There's an addendum to the
I believe she's speaking about the
personnel
division.
report
Is that Division D?
that's adding a position.
At CMS? No?
I don't know what you're referring to, but you can add to it.
I apologize. Are you speaking about the discipline position at CMS?
Yes.
Gotcha, okay. I misunderstood what you were saying. That position is still in there, yes, to
Yes,
deal with the
so-
student needs at that building.
Yes, right. Because if there had been some more attention, quite frankly, taken with that building, we might not be at the level that we're at. Let's see. So when we go down to positions being eliminated, so the 6.5 at central office, what positions actually are those?
Can I, before we even talk about specifically what positions, have we even, like, this is a recommendation, right? We have not approved this yet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well,
Because what I'm hearing through the very strong MCPS grapevine is that it has already been told to people, and people already know, and people already have heard everything that's going to happen. So I'm a little confused tonight, only because I don't remember us voting on this at our last closed session, voting to go forward with all of this. So maybe I missed something?
You did not, we did not vote on it. The last two closed sessions, we talked with the board and went over every single position with everyone here, and I think, Ms. Cash, you were not at the first one, and we were at the last one.
But
Correct.
I did not know we were going to go out and actually communicate it to the public before we actually approve it.
After the last meeting, my understanding of closed session was it was going to be placed on this agenda for a vote, and we would vote on it, and we're going to discuss it in closed session, was my understanding, and that we contacted the impacted employees, myself and the team, whether it was Dr. Wickham or Dr. Whitaker, and said, this is what we're thinking, this is what our proposal is going to be to the board. That was the direction I got. That's what I shared.
And that was what I thought. But I think something went wrong somewhere, because everyone out there knows what's happening. And to me, when this kind of thing is happening, at least in my HR experience, is you sit down with the individual, you have a conversation, you talk about the needs of the organization, we know the budget and all of that, and you have that conversation. This is kind of what we're thinking, and this is what we're thinking of doing. This is between me and you, it's confidential, but, I'm going to be bringing this to the board as a suggestion, and then you come to us and you ask for our approval. But that's not what happened.
That is what happened on our end. I can't speak to what happens outside of when we tell people information, and to think that it's not going to get out, I don't know what to say to that.
So can I also ask a clarifying question here? On what we are talking about right now with the budget, people are also talking about specific positions, which I understand feeds into the overall budget, but when we vote to pass this operational budget, it's for these line items on slide, 9, right?
Yes, these categories is
So
what you're.
how that, as far as individual personnel, teachers, which building, things like that, that's not what we're voting on. We're just voting on how much money we're giving to each of these categories, right?
Are connected to
Impacting
these numbers.
budget.
In a big picture, you are correct, yes. You would be approving based upon the categories this budget. What we are doing is explaining how we get to these categories is through those reductions. So you can look at it both ways. Yes, you could make changes later based upon the categories and say we want to do this, but the way we got to those numbers, it would have to be a flesh of the number to make that work if it was something different.
The reason I said what I said is all of a sudden we were going to start talking about specific positions. Well, there's not a whole lot of confidentiality if we are publishing it to the entire audience of MCPS about what's going to happen. Okay, yeah, this job's going to go, and this job's going to go, and this one's going to stay. I would feel awful if I was that person who had one of those jobs and everybody in the public was sitting there listening to finding out, I know not at the same time, but knowing that the public was going to hear all about this at a school board meeting. And so I just find that just a terrible way to treat our staff.
Ms.
And
Cass,
I think
we
how it
didn't
should happen, I'm sorry, Bernie, let me just finish, okay? I think how it should have happened is the conversations I talked about should have been had. You came back to us tonight in closed session and say, okay, I've talked, this is what we want to do. And then we move forward on a communication plan of how these things should be announced. But we just look like we just willy-nilly started putting people in different positions. Here, you're going here, and you're going here, and you're going there, and so what? It's a job, you got one. We're treating people, I just think it's so disrespectful how we are treating our employees. I am sorry. I know that sounds terrible, but I just would not want to be one of those employees out there right now who's having to listen to all this. So.
I appreciate that point, Ms. Cass. Can I just respond to that? Can I respond to that?
Hang on, Ms. Franklin. Can we let
At
Dr.
the
Reagan
food
answer?
truck rodeo,
I didn't tell
yes.
anyone at the food truck rodeo.
that yes, this is what's going to be happening.
That's not accurate. So in response to what you said, Ms. Cass, I thought we were discussing those specifics in closed session and that we would vote on specific things. That's what I thought we were doing today. And I didn't think it would be appropriate to discuss employees at that time had we not talked to them ahead of time. And that was, I thought, the direction that we got from this board.
We just started talking about them, so that's why I wanted to put
Well,
a
I
quash to that, because I don't think
Okay.
it's
I think that's fair.
the right time to have that conversation.
I was responding to a question by Ms. Franklin, but I thought we were discussing that in closed session this evening with the specificity that we were asked to bring back.
Okay, so in closed session, there was a lot of questions about responsibilities, how they were going to be handled, and we didn't get answers. We got just very vague, well, this is going to happen, this is going to happen there, right? I had a lot more questions, and I shared that, and I asked for a meeting so that we could have a deeper conversation, so we would know how responsibilities were going to be handled to make sure that things didn't fall by the wayside or weren't being done the way they should be done, as I stated before, so that we don't end up with people filing reports against us, the state looking at us because we aren't doing things the correct way, the courts questioning what we're doing in relation to students and how things are being handled. So having that conversation would have maybe prevented this conversation tonight. But since that conversation was not scheduled, then I plan on having that conversation now. Because at the end of the board meeting, after all this has been presented, I don't understand why we would need to have that conversation. Because it's like it's a done deal.
Okay.
So,
My thought at the last board meeting was the questions that were asked, I thought they were answered. If they weren't, I apologize, or we wouldn't have ended the closed session. I don't know why it did if there were still ongoing questions. I know, Ms. Franklin, you emailed me and said that you thought there was some inaccuracies with the data that was presented.
Yep.
And I said, please give me a call, and I'll be more than happy to share it with you on 2 separate occasions, to which you never called me. So did you really want the information or not?
yeah, because the reason why I didn't call you was because I don't trust what you're saying. because there have been a couple of occasions already where I have asked questions and I got vague answers and then finally, the truth came out about what was actually happening in those situations. So no, I don't feel comfortable asking.
I lied to you? I lied to you?
Especially.
I lied to you?
I said I didn't get the truth.
From who?
I didn't get the full story from you,
Okay,
okay? So I don't feel comfortable
okay.
having those conversations with you.
Well, I try
without
hard to
other
have the
people
authentic.
present.
I tried to keep.
And that's why I asked for a meeting with the board so that questions and concerns that, because my phone and my email and my text messages have been blowing up for
So,
a
Ms.
week.
Franklin, let me interject and say, so you had called me this weekend and asked if we were going to be meeting. I don't ever remember
Let's-
getting a
let's
request.
back up, Mark.
But hang on,
Because
hang on.
I
hang
had
on, hang
I
on.
called you first
hang on.
with the concerns that I had
And-
and asked that we have a meeting. And you said, I think I'm gonna be out of town next week, and I said, I am too. And you suggested, well, we can still have a meeting and we can just call in. And I talked to every board member about my concerns. Yes, you did, and sent information to them that I had received because it was very questionable what was going on.
Okay, so.
And then I communicated with you to ask you why it was not on the agenda or why we didn't have that meeting before.
Well, I
we met
apologize if there was a
today.
communication issue between, no, because what the concerns that you brought up, I thought were being addressed. I mean, I addressed them to the best of my ability to see where things were going to go and if we needed to have the meeting. And it wasn't really until this weekend that you reached out to me about that we needed to have a second, the other meeting. So, look, on our board, our bylaws are such that the chair can call a called meeting or an emergency meeting, whatever you want to call it, or two board members can call it. So it doesn't have to come down to me to do it. If it was something that was important, put it in writing. Send me a text asking specifically what you wanted to do.
I will surely do that from now on.
Well, that's fine. I mean, look, I think my response was that we can still talk about these things tonight in closed session, which I think at least some of this stuff is where it is appropriate to discuss.
And
So,
my response was, why is it at the end of the meeting? And your response was, well, you know how these things go, right? So your
I
recollection
think
of
you were
this is
misunderstanding what I was
absolutely
referring to
ridiculous.
there. But anyway, we are here now to talk about the budget. So let me see if anybody else, any other board members?
Not finished yet.
That's fine, but I think that we have a kind of our rule about 3 minutes, and I think we're there. Let's go around.
We
and I will
haven't
give you
abided
a
by that 3
chance.
minutes but one
I
time
will give you a
since the
chance
retreat.
to speak again if you would like, but I just want to hear from
Yeah,
other
well, I won't
board
be
members.
silenced.
I'm not
Understand
trying to
it.
silence you, Ms. Franklin.
Really? Okay.
I do think, Mark, that one of the things that and maybe I misunderstood at our last meeting, but I thought it was basically you guys were going to go back and kind of talk to people and then come back to us to let us know what the final decisions were. That was the impression I'd gotten at that last closed session. Not that this was a done deal, that people were going to be told and the announcements were going to be made.
See, I'm just going to say, I came away with the complete different thought than you. I came out of that closed session
Voted
thinking,
to do all of
we didn't vote it, but nobody said don't do it. Nobody did, okay? And
Yes. There
no,
were
we had
things we
a
were
couple.
still questioning.
There were a couple, but nobody said don't do it because I had,
They go out and my understanding was that Dr. Brigham would talk to the individuals or whomever would talk to them and have conversation with them. But, I mean, because if that's true, then basically you're saying we've already approved all of this. Is that what you're saying? Yep. That we're okay with all of this?
he said that night, I'm going to start meetings tomorrow with these people. Why would he talk to people if it wasn't going to be something he was going to follow through with? I mean, I don't understand. I'm not
board
saying,
hadn't
and I agree that things might have come to light since then, that there might have been questions for, Penny and I had a conversation as well after the fact, so I hear that part of it. But that night, I don't think anybody said, no, this is not what, I mean, when, I'm thinking when you speak to someone and say, this is what's coming down the pike, then how can you go back and say?
I can very much remember putting my head down on the table saying, I can't believe we're doing this.
But
I mean,
did
so
you
I'm,
say
I'm
don't
pretty
do-
sure I had a problem with several of them.
But I don't remember, and I was sitting right there, you saying don't do it. In fact, I know you didn't. I was sitting right there
If I
in
could,
that meeting.
if I could add some, we didn't publish anything or say this is what we're doing. We met with employees, and I don't want to mention specifics, and said this will be our recommendation to the board on the May 16th board meeting. And I thought we were going to discuss it in closed session, and you're all going to vote on it. You could say yes to this one, no to that one. That's your right as a board. No one's taken any action here tonight. As far as I know, the idea was we would bring that back to closed session. That's where I left off, and if I misunderstood it.
That was my understanding.
And that makes sense, and that was my understanding as well, and I'm totally fine with that, but isn't the budget approval the next thing we're supposed to vote on tonight? Or am I misunderstanding the agenda?
Wait a minute, because I thought we weren't supposed to be voting during a work session. That's what I was told.
I mean, I'm sure the answer is going to be, we need a budget so we can move forward with retaining our teachers and stuff, but, I mean, there's a lot of questions we got to get through that.
Well, let me ask you this, and, protocol-wise, I'm not as familiar with the Virginia code as I was in New Jersey, but let's say you didn't vote on the budget right now. We went to closed session, then you come back in public session, and you decide to vote on it or not. That's your right as a board. So I don't think you have to do it before that. If you don't feel the moves are right and they impact the budget.
That's correct. We can amend the agenda.
The thought was, again, I'm working under the Code of Virginia, my expectations for here, which is new for me, that we needed to do this somewhat quickly so we can give the contracts to our employees in a timely manner. They wouldn't have to wait and wonder whether they were getting their jobs renewed or not. That was my understanding. If this board chooses to wait until the June meeting, that's your right as a board, or vote on it after closed session. I'm not trying to shove anything down anyone's throat. I'm willing to talk to anyone. And, despite what some people believe, I maintain the authentic communication in my words. So I'll have that conversation with you, Ms. Franklin, with 2 or 3 other people, anybody you want.
I think that's my comment, right? I mean, just to kind of maybe diffuse a little bit, right? Like this sucks, right? I mean, there's nothing good about this. Like, no one's going to be happy about anything we do tonight or whenever we vote for this, right? And
Or the impact it's going to have on our students.
That's right.
And our
Students,
current
our
teachers.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, I hate it for everyone who had to do this, because this isn't fun, and I hate that we're having to argue about it tonight, but I do think that we owe this process enough time to discuss it, work through these issues, and try to get the best answer that we can. So I would definitely prefer to not vote on it tonight, if at all possible.
Or can we at least defer it to after closed session?
Because the contracts is a big issue. We had that challenge last year, and what we had to do was we gave them contracts like time and place right now, what they're currently making. Then we had to redo the contracts, and that was caused by the state, not us. So that adds an extra level, and it adds a level of unsurety to our teachers. And I think we have to keep that into consideration as well.
So I understand that, but because of the state, it is not the first time or the second or even the third time that we have had to wait to tell our employees what their salaries would actually be. Because I have some real concerns about how some of these decisions with these positions were made. Real concerns. And I passed those on to all board members and requested that we have a meeting, and everyone agreed to do that. Everyone. And it didn't happen. To
I
have a
didn't-
meeting. Yes, you did.
I said if you want to
You said-
schedule one.
You said we'll let Mark decide how it's gonna go, right?
I said yes.
But you agreed.
And Jamie said yes, and Dana said yes.
Dana said yes, and Linwood said
So that's
yes,
4
and
right
Mark
there.
said yes.
Okay.
And as the chair, nothing happened.
Well, we're at a meeting now.
Okay. I realize, Linwood, I agree with everything you just said, and I can't speak for our staff, but I think I'd rather, if I was still a teacher today, I'd rather know that everybody was really looking at all of this seriously and thinking hard about it than rushing a decision just so I can get my contract tomorrow. Because if it means we have to just, because then that sounds like we're just voting for how much are we going to hammer out tonight? We're not going to hammer out anything else. I mean, We haven't had a chance to even think about it. And Annie, did have to go back and redo numbers and.
We've had 3 weeks,
No,
so.
4 weeks.
no. Let's be clear. We've been given recommendations, this is what we want to do, whatever, but as a board to have a conversation, really have a conversation, especially in public, about what things we would like to prioritize, that didn't happen. In public, no. There was never been a meeting saying, okay, so what are the things that the board would like us to prioritize when it comes to what we have to cut, where we have to cut it?
So my recommendation would be, for now, when we're done with the conversation about the budget, when we go to approve the budget, I would recommend that we amend the agenda to have it, to vote on it after closed session. Now, if we go in closed session, we have a conversation. If we decide we need more time, we decide we want to put it on unfinished business or put it on the agenda for the next meeting, we still have the option to do that. I think that gives us the most options, I think. So we can still do what Penny suggested, what Sue suggested, but it gives us some more options, and I think we could probably move forward together if we do it that way. But if you guys agree with me, I need a motion to do that.
I don't agree.
So what
I
it,
don't even think I even understood what you said. I mean,
The agenda, so let me put it this way. The agenda right now calls for us to vote on the operating budget after we're done with this discussion. Okay? That's going to happen unless we vote to amend the agenda one way or another, right? What I'm saying is, let's move that to after closed session. If after closed session, everybody's had their questions answered and we're ready to vote, we can come out and vote on it tonight, and then it doesn't cause the timing issues. If after closed session, the majority of the board does not want to vote on it or feels like we need another meeting, and we can have more discussions with the staff about what the impact of that might be, then we can still have the option to push the vote off until the June meeting, the first meeting in June.
And I am more than willing to discuss anything that has to do with our budget, because it is very important. But I do kind of disagree with the fact that staff won't matter about their contracts because they
I
will.
said that was my opinion.
Right, but I don't, because that's the one thing I hear constantly is, well, we haven't got our contract, when are we gonna get our, that's a big thing for employees. And to the comment that was made earlier, the long time that I've been on the board, sad to say, sometimes I'm the last to know for many years about things because of talk that comes out of closed session, that comes out of all kinds of things. That's been going on for years. I don't understand it. I don't know why, but that has always happened. It's like a hotline of communication, and it's always been there. So I don't think this year that's the first time that that's ever happened. It's constantly been there.
I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
You were saying that
the public
the
already
public
knows
knew,
who.
and the MCPS
I said
grapevine,
that. The
that grapevine's been there. It's established.
I know that.
It's been there rooted for years.
I know that, I said that. That's exactly what I said in the
Constantly.
beginning. That's what I said. We all know the MCPS grapevine is very active. I knew. I know.
Whether it should be or
I'm
not.
All right, so let's, is there any more public discussion or public appropriate discussion on the budget right now? We're on discussing the budget in this presentation, not approving it, which is the next agenda
Andy, how
item.
much do we save by, what are we talking about in an increase in health insurance premiums?
Do you want to discuss that, Mark?
A little bit. So our premiums, as you know, has always been tough to figure out because we start our year at October. And as the as the claims come in, that gives our advisors time to get through it. But right now, adding the 600 additional thousand is about 14% increase to the employees. That gives 600,000 more for them, and it would be another additional million on the MCPS side that we would put into the self-insurance.
Unless if we could, it's hard to make a determination on this because I don't know what the current pay, what it costs them now versus what it is we're going to chart, what we're talking about as an increase. So it's kind of hard to, if I can't visualize the amounts, what is this going to cost the average? No, I don't think. Have we heard that before?
I mean, if you,
I apologize if I have missed a couple meetings.
what's an average, I mean, not an average, but I mean, what's a typical, you know?
Depends on the plan they're having, right? And if you're a single, married with child, parent with child, or married and family. Could you just give us a rundown on what the employee costs would be right now for,
Excuse me for just a second, before you go through all that trouble. Because whenever there has been a proposed change to the health care, there has always been a breakdown by plan, by family, by single member, by whatever, so that we as a board can see exactly how that is impacting our employees. And now it just says contribution health care premium.
we can get you all that. Reason we don't have it right now is we were in conversations with our broker as early as last week to get those finalized numbers to get exactly what it was. So this initial budget that you saw there had a $2.6 million increase in funding for the health insurance. And that was mainly because, as we said, the health reserve account is about $1 million now. It started out at about $2.5 million on the year. What that means is our claims are exceeding what we budgeted. In talking with the health broker from Gallagher last week, we were told they recommended that we budget, I'm making up a number, don't hold me to the exact number, $1,000 per employee per month for health benefits, and we budgeted $800. So we under budgeted what our claims would be, and our claims are coming in about that 1,000, little under 900 and something per employee per month. That's why we're depleting that reserve account. So we, as a team, got together. What we presented to this board, I think it was in February, was to increase that funding $2.6 million. So, and that, even with that though, that would have included a 6% increase in premiums of what the employee would have to pay. This change is about a 14% increase to help reduce that, to get it down to $1 million. We don't have the exact numbers yet because we don't have that. And I understand your trepidation, and that's why I didn't want to ask our team here to present a number that I'm not sure is 100% accurate. So our goal was to ensure that the employees would not pay more than 14% of the percentage of what they were paying as an increase. We could have all that numbers for you.
So is that what you're at? Because the only thing that you're, again, this is part of the asking us to approve the budget. So I just want to understand. So here it says increase employee contribution to health insurance premiums. What exactly would I be voting to approve?
Can I give an example, Mark? Tell me if I'm right.
I'd rather hear it from Mark.
Oh, and I was going to say, when we did have that presentation, because Annie, do you remember me asking you if we matched, if they, for a spouse? Remember I asked you that question in that meeting, and you were like, no, I don't believe that we do. If someone had, that we had to match what a family plan was. And you said, no, that was a choice. But I know I asked it at the meeting that it was given to.
We did not give, we didn't give, like, if you look at, like, for me, I'm on the HSA account, right? So for the employee, that's free, right? So that, right now, in the current year, we have that zero cost plan. I pay, my children are on it, so I pay for them, right? I think I pay right now, I could be wrong, $116 a month, I think is what that is for that. So for me, it would be a 14% on top of that 116. Now, it's not 14% of zero, right? Because that math doesn't work. But those are the increases that we are looking at. As Dr. Bragan shared, we are working on getting those numbers for you exactly, and I believe we will have them very soon. You know, that plan year, as a reminder, doesn't start till October. And so that's part of it is we're still collecting data on our service year, as Mark was explaining. You know, we look at that, we look at those trends. It's kind of a weird calendar where it starts in October. It doesn't start in July when their plan starts. And so that's why it's a little bit different and off time.
And still, going through the budget process, those dates and times always have been the same, but we still have gotten information that lays out for us how it's going to affect our employees.
Well, I think Dr. Whitaker just gave an example. If our family contribution is $116, it would increase 14% on $116. If you're up,
So just give me that information for all our employees, how that's gonna affect.
we could definitely do that, but we don't have the exact numbers. That's what we're working on.
She just gave you
That's an example that she's paying this year.
So you just, and she said, so you just add 14% to it, so that's what you could do.
We could definitely do that.
We would have that information in front
What,
of us.
what I was saying, though, is, and
That may be different, Dr.
we can,
And it
the
still
pro-
would be an estimate.
it will be an estimate. You're exactly right. So we'll try to get that, we can get that as soon as tomorrow. The idea was we want to get the most updated claims so that projection is exactly accurate. Our broker asked us to budget amount that we went under last year. So we want to try to get the exact amount that they're asking us to budget in order to make sure we make all our claims. This isn't an exact science. You don't know if you're going to the hospital this year. You don't know if, God forbid, you get in an automobile accident or get a catastrophic injury, and all those things impact what those claims are. But when we started looking at the budget for this year, we had concerns because we underfunded it last year, and our reserve account was approaching zero. When it approaches zero, when Dr. Whitaker goes to the hospital, gets work, and we can't pay the claims, that doesn't work. That's not fiscally responsible. We can't do that. And as much as people believe there's some type of malfeasance here, it's not. It's trying to get accurate numbers, because I know when we put a number out there, it's out there forever, and I want to make sure it's accurate. And we didn't get the absolute accurate numbers. What I told this team and what I told everyone, we would not support anything greater than a 14% increase in the premiums. If it comes in higher, we're going to have to make that up somewhere else, because that's too far a burden for the employees. At a 5% raise, you're going to take more of their pay from their insurance premium. That's just less and less for our employees. It's no cheaper to live here in Montgomery County than it is anywhere else. So that's why we didn't give you an exact number. We will get it for tomorrow to this full board.
Yeah, so again, I'm gonna say, that is what happens every year, because this date is here and this is here. And even if it's said, and it has been repeatedly throughout the years, this is an estimate, these numbers could change. But at least there was something in front of us that showed what that 14%, how it was gonna impact our employees.
I hear you, and we'll do that.
So I have a question about, on the increased access to preschool was something that we kept. I just want to make sure, I'm assuming the reason we're keeping that is, I mean, we've said this in a qualitative way before, right? But now we're talking budget and numbers, right? And we're having to make some difficult trade-offs here, right? But we believe that paying the money to have that preschool actually comes back to us in spades in the years to come, correct?
Absolutely.
I just want to kind of,
Early intervention for our children is the best indicator of their future success. And so truly, if we can get ahead of it, it is much more cost-effective to get ahead as opposed to remediate. And so
so there's not much on your green side of the slide that I can think of that, you know, where we'd want to keep or make further cuts. The one thing on the cut side that I did want to ask about, and Sue kind of brought it up, I guess I didn't realize I mean, not to say that $10,000 is not a lot of money, but $10,000 spread out over, you know, every single one of our teachers in the course of this budget doesn't seem like a huge number, but it's a mental thing where we're now coming to our teachers and say, thank you, now we'd like you to pay for your licensure. Why, can you walk me through the thinking on that? Was there just like not another dime to make up anywhere else? Is it something that we had been doing recently and now we're just going back to the way that we were doing it? I mean, what's?
So, you know, in looking at the things that we do, right, it is an over and above. Again, it's a great service. You know, I have my license up for renewal next year, right? It is $50. Before I came to Montgomery personally, I had never seen any school division who has ever paid this. So when we were looking at what were things that we might do that would not be a huge impact, you know, $50 over 10 years, we felt was not going to be a significant impact to our employees. It wouldn't be something where they went somewhere else and they would get that paid for in another school division for them. You know, I know every $50 does matter, but when we looked at it, you know, one conversation I had with Dr. Berrigan about something, and I said, but every 10,000 adds up. right? So when you are looking at cuts and you have to get to that bottom line, you know, the big numbers are there. So once you go through big things, then you have to start looking at small things.
Didn't you say that you don't know other school systems that do that?
You're correct, yeah.
Okay, so we'd be setting a precedent, so how is that an incentive for people to come to our school system? Oh, and we make you pay for your license, too.
No, I'm saying I don't know any other place that pays for it.
Pays for it? Oh, we're the only ones who pay for it?
We are the only ones that I know of
Okay, I
that
thought you
pay
said
for
it the other way
No, no.
around. I misunderstood.
I don't, and again, that doesn't mean nobody does, but I'm just not aware of that. And so it's not something that we say, hey, come to us, we'll pay for your license every 10 years. It is a nice thing. I was shocked because my first year I wrote a check and they were like, we don't need your check. But you know, when looking at, again, the big items we did first, and then you have to finish picking together other items to come to it.
So that is an incentive for people to come. So no matter how small it would be, throughout the years, we've tried to add this and this, trying to help make our package look better to people who may consider coming to Montgomery County.
To me, it's just one of those things where if we did find the 10,000, or if we had 10,000 of because for this has to be I guess this could be one-time money for paying something like this, maybe not for budgeting, I don't know.
For 1 year, yeah. But each year it
No, I'm just
happens.
saying
So
for-
it's,
for
over
this-
time, it's a recurring.
For this year, I mean, I think, to me, I agree with, to me, that's just a mental thing, you know, of just, okay, you're increasing my health care, which I think we have to do, right? But we're getting $600,000 out of there. I don't know where else we're gonna get $600,000. But the 10,000, maybe we can find, I don't know. I mean, that's why I asked the question, so.
Mark, just to piggyback on that comment, though, and going back to one of the comments from public address, I mean, you know, that's a small amount, but when you add it to everything else, right? I mean, so many of these categories, you know, are going to impact our teachers, you know, between the licensure, the not getting the retention bonus. Okay, they didn't have that, so we're not taking it away, but they're not going to get it, right? The health insurance impacts, you know, we're reducing teachers in some places. That inflation cost thing ultimately means teachers are likely going to have to do more with less.
Oh, and also the school supplies?
The school supplies, absolutely.
If you don't think that what's going to happen now is teachers are going to pay for school supplies out of their pocket, which is what all teachers have done forever, and now that they're going to have to go back to doing that again. So that's another place we've taken away.
I mean, I know that this is hard. I just, in an ideal world, we would have gotten all the money, right? In a slightly less ideal world, it would have been nice to have kind of spread these pains out a little bit more across the district instead of having it centered so much on the teachers. But
I will share some information, which is for next year's purchases with those school supplies. We did ask teachers to go ahead and had that open through the end of this school year to pre-purchase. So there has been an opportunity for next year to buy supplies. It would really be within next year. Does that make sense? They're purchasing now for next year. It would be within next year's budget when we would close that. But we did reopen, as Dr. Bragan asked, that we reopen it through the end of May, and teachers have been putting in additional orders for next year. And the amount there is pretty significant.
And I agree, the impact on teachers is the greatest, but when I look at the administration positions that have been eliminated, especially one administrator position, so when that gets filled, is that because we have an administrator that's making money at this level because of experience versus putting someone in who's going to make less money? So we're going to say, what is that called? Lapse money? Is that how that affects that?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're talking about.
Which is wrong, plain and simple. Because I have huge concerns about how some of these administrative positions were eliminated.
Can you speak to what your concern is about how that was done? Because you've mentioned that a few times, and I'm curious to learn.
Several times. The processes through.
What was the process
evaluations,
that
The
you
process,
understand?
how those were done,
How was it done that you understand that was wrong?
that there were evaluations that weren't given. The opportunity wasn't
For
there.
these employees that we're talking about here?
And that.
For these employees here, there were evaluations that weren't written? Is that what you're saying?
For at least one that I know of, yes,
On this list here?
yes, yes.
Okay.
responsibilities are going to be passed on. And just piling things on to other folks, I believe, is the wrong way to do things.
Well, you said how the decisions were made. No one said we're piling anything on anyone. And we're making an I'm talking, I let you finish. It would be respectful if you listened to me.
More
It's disrespectful to talk over me.
folks, then that's how that happens. Because you've said the same thing repeatedly, that we're not doing that, but that's what's gonna happen. Other folks will have responsibilities because you lay it out right here.
Can I talk now? You said, pouring things on, or the term you used, that's not what we've done or not what we would consider to do. But more importantly, you said the process was flawed and it wasn't done right. Explain to me your understanding of the process and what was done wrong, and who told you and led you to believe that.
One of those was how evaluations were done.
So the process is the process, or is it one person's evaluation wasn't done? Because I'm not aware of that, but if that's the case.
That one position, but there could be more.
Could be. You said there was. You said the process was flawed, though. You're painting a brush and calling my integrity into question without any data. And if you think that's okay, that's not okay.
I didn't name you at all.
You did so.
I did not.
Okay, can we?
Did.
Hey,
We'll watch
Dr.
the
If I
tape.
did, you would have
Can-
heard your name.
Can we please discuss this in closed session?
And that's when I asked for it to be discussed.
And that's when we'll discuss it.
And you did not create that
and-
opportunity.
That opportunity is still there. It is still up to the board to decide on all of these things.
If it had been done the way it should have been done, it would have been resolved at this point, and we wouldn't be having this discussion or having to have the discussion in closed session after this.
Okay. Are there any more comments on the budget presentation or questions? Okay. Moving on to the operational budget, would anyone like to make a motion regarding, where am I here? Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the 2023-24 operating budget?
I move that this budget not be voted on until all concerns have been addressed.
Until at least the next meeting? That's what I would say.
Can I ask real quick, I did not finish the 2 slides on the budget presentation. I apologize. I just
Hey,
needed
I didn't think
to
we were
very
done.
quickly
Oh, I'm sorry,
do the
the-
last 2 slides. if you don't
I'm
mind.
sorry,
It's okay. I
no,
got away from
the school
the school
nutrition,
nutrition, yeah.
sorry, we usually do those in 2 separate things, so
It's
that's why
okay.
sorry about that.
I'll split them out completely for you next time. All right. So the last 2 slides for you are the school nutrition budget. As a reminder, this budget is self-sustaining, and so it is separate from the school operating budget. The biggest thing of note to the board here is the increase in our school lunches. You'll see that breakfast has remained at the stable price that it is at, and then we have an increase of 10 cents for elementary and secondary lunches, 25 cents for our full-price adult. I'm sorry, my eyes. And then 25 on the milk will be the increases for those. So what you have presented for you there is the school nutrition budget. And are there any questions regarding that?
So there's been a lot of concern about how employees of Montgomery County in our nutrition program and with the nutrition group are being treated, especially with salary. And I've been asking and asking, is that going to be resolved? Has it been resolved? Because we learned under the previous administration, those 2 groups weren't even allowed to talk to each other about how to operate the nutrition program.
So within the salary corrections that you see in the budget, we do have salary corrections for our school nutrition staff. We do that internally. Because the board is elected to hire an external source to conduct our school nutrition programs, we do not have control over their pay. That is why we bring them in, so that they can pay their staff. So we have no ability, to tell them what to do in terms of how to pay their staff. That is their operating. So our staff has been corrected. In terms of relationships, I don't want to overspeak for our school nutrition staff, but my hope is what you would hear is that we have worked to bring the team together collaboratively. Dr. Bragan and myself have met multiple times, both with school nutrition and our local school nutrition supervisor, Jenny, to really build that bridge and to bring the team together. So I do feel that we are on a better path as a group working together. Does that address your question?
So the pay scale
Yes.
So I'll have to relook at that to make sure I'm
Yeah, so what,
seeing
We do have a meeting scheduled with our people from the school nutrition program on Thursday, I believe, Dr. Whitaker.
So can you get an average of the wages?
Sure.
No, I mean, now, do you know, just an average?
oh, no, I don't know off the top of my head, I'm sorry. Do you, Mark? Which,
Yeah, just for our frontline nutrition folks, not the managers. Just a
I don't have an
ballpark
average
figure.
based on each employee, but the scale, I could do a quick.
I think you need to
calculation.
move
Yeah,
yours
just the
closer.
scale,
to
that's what
Mike's.
If you give me just a minute, I'll get back. I can
Yeah.
crack.
Thank you.
All right, can we circle back to that when we vote on the nutrition budget?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so now,
Just to clarify, I'm sorry, Chair. You've mentioned a couple of times that staff adjustment. I just want to make sure in the budget, that's the classified staff adjustments line item that's in there?
Yes,
And that's still in there even in the revised budget?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay. All right, so now moving on to the 23-24 operational budget. Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the 23-24 operating budget? I believe Ms. Franklin
Yes, I'll make a
was in
motion
the
that
process
we
of
do
making.
not vote on this budget until all questions have been answered.
Do I have a second?
Would you entertain an amendment to that that would give a more definitive time?
Yeah, with timing, like till next meeting,
Next meeting, I don't know, we'll do it.
we'll at least postpone it until next meeting.
I think that'll give us, that'll make sure we do get.
We can always
Get it
then
all done.
postpone it again, but, yeah, otherwise it's kind of a vague, yeah, I don't know who will agree, who
A
will
lot of
make the.
this is vague, but anyway. No, I'm not going to amend mine.
Okay. Hearing no second, the motion fails. Do I have another motion for the 23-24 operating budget?
I make a motion that we, postpone the vote on the budget until our next meeting on June 2nd.
No.
I think it's the 5th or 6th.
6th, June 6th, that's what it is. June 6th.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, board? I mean,
I think we've had our discussion, Mark.
it's fine, I mean, but we've only got 6 members here today, so again, I'm trying to find a way. Most of us can move forward, and I don't think I'm going to entertain pushing it off to the next meeting without at least having a chance to talk about it and consider it after closed session, so I'll be voting no on this. Oh, I'm going to be voting no because I would like to postpone it until, not till the next meeting on June 6th. I would like to postpone it until after closed session tonight. And then after closed session, we could postpone it again if we choose. What I said earlier.
I don't see how after a closed session we could actually, I don't see how we could feel comfortable with everything just after sitting in closed session and having some conversation. I think it sounds like there's a lot that we need to think about, so I would feel like.
I think we should give staff the opportunity to answer the questions that have come up and that will come up, and then
Right,
take
but
it
I
from there.
think that's, you're asking them on the spot to
That's
come
fine.
up.
So did we get a second on your motion?
We did,
Yeah.
yeah. So is there any more,
Second.
is there any more discussion on that? Okay. Ms. Drake, roll call, please.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
No.
Ms. Graham?
Wait a minute,
Wait,
yeah.
okay.
Can you reread the motion? again?
Clarify what we're
To
voting on.
postpone the pending motion until the next school board meeting on June 6, 2023.
Okay, so we're clear now. So why don't we start the vote again, just so
Sure.
that everybody's been clarified.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
No.
Ms. Graham?
I'm thinking.
Would you like to pass?
Pass. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Chewbacca?
No.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Okay. We'll vote at the next meeting. All right, next item on the agenda, the school nutritional program budget. Would anyone wish to make a motion regarding the 23-24 school nutritional budget?
A motion that we approve the school nutrition budget as presented.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, board?
Yes, I'm not going to be voting for any of these budgets at any time unless there's some changes to how we treat our employees as far as compensation. And I made that clear in the very beginning of this process.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
No.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
No.
Ms. Cass?
Could you read it to me one more time? I'm so sorry.
Approve the
Oh, it's right up there in front of me?
23-2024 school nutrition budget as presented.
No.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
3 in favor, 3 opposed.
Motion
Board
fails.
Chair, yes, I want to make sure.
Motion what?
It fails.
Is that going to cause is that something we can do at the next meeting?
It's fine to delay it.
Do we need a motion to delay it? Would that help? Or is it just going to automatically carry over?
We'll bring it to the next
We'll
agenda.
put it on the next agenda. All right, next item of business is the pay plan. Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the 23-24 pay plan?
Can we have some discussion first?
Yeah, yes, but I guess I need a motion and a second so that we can have discussion. Did I get a motion? Where are we?
Excuse me, Dr. Whitaker, isn't the pay plan predicated on
Yes.
the budget passing?
Yes, sir. The pay plan is correlated to the 5% raise. I would note for you, the difference that you may see this year for the previous years is it's about 130-something pages. Yeah. And so the reason for that is we have been asked by many of our employees to show the steps on the scale. And a couple years ago, we used to do that, and for each scale, it showed the different steps. And then the school division moved forward to only showing steps on teacher scales and not on our other employee scales. And so in order to provide that information, that's why all of those pages are there. I would like to note, people go, why are there so many? And it is important for you to know that one job may have 5 different scales, and let me give you a reason why. Each number of employees, hours worked, so if you're an aide and you work 3.5 hours a day, that's one scale. Even though the rate of hourly pay may be the same based upon your job role, within our system, it's a different scale. If you're working 4.5 hours, because of the hours worked, even if the rate of the pay is same, it's another scale because that's the way Munis does the system. And so we wanted to provide the school division and community with every pay scale that we have and not remove anything. You can still look at the front of the guide and see the way that it used to be, but then we also included that appendix at the end so that every piece of information was available to the public.
I thought in the past that we've, like, this is this year's, and usually we see both. Like, I don't know, so this is what we're recommending for this year. What does last year's look like?
So when we were talking earlier in the budget cycle about what percentage raises we wanted to bring forward, with that 5%, it is a 5% for each employee. And so what you're seeing here is that 5% increase, but it's not, it is 5% for every role that are full-time positions.
Okay, I always find our teacher scales to be just so confusing. So on a,
I can certainly bring that back for you for the next meeting if you'd like.
I'm just trying to understand, because then also we had Mr. Chilcote talking earlier about the 5% versus 5%. I wasn't quite sure what he was saying.
Well, Mr. Chilcote,
And it's the problem, I remember having the same conversation in the past, that when I think of a 5% salary increase, I think of what I'm making, and I get 5% more than what I'm making on top of that.
correct, yes.
But how does that,
What Mr. Chilcote is explaining is taking the extra 5% on what you would make if you had one more year of experience this year. So, I think the confusion that some folks has is they think that they're going to get the step increase, which is an average of 1.7%. It's not the same across, but that is the average between them. They think that they may get the 1.7 plus 5, so a 6.7% raise is what that would be. School board policy is very clear.
that's not, I don't think that's what he meant.
Okay.
Is it, okay?
Finish real quick, we don't, yeah.
Okay.
So the 5% is flat based upon the number. School board policy requires that you approve a pay plan each year. You only approve it for that year. We've tried really hard to communicate and help people understand. There's no guarantee for next year because, as you know, funding isn't guaranteed. So we can't promise people pay in the future. What we do is we tell them the scale for this year, and then each year the board reevaluates. If you wanted to do a 3%, it is based upon the current scales and over, not on what they would make if they, if they just moved to the next step, they wouldn't get the 5% unless you gave them that and the 5% on top of it. If he is speaking about something different, I'm not sure, but that is how I can communicate it.
I think I can clarify. So if Bernie Bragan was making $50,000 on step 10, next year I would go to step 11. So if step 11 was $51,000 this year,
But let's use the real numbers here, because I'm looking at them right now.
well, I don't have
Go
it in
ahead,
front
go
of me,
ahead.
but if it was $51,000 for next year, the expectation would be that entire step would have gone up 5%, which would make sense, about $2,500. That's not what we've done here. What we've done is if Bernie was making $50,000 this year, he's getting $2,500 in more pay. So step 11 would reflect that. So it doesn't necessarily
52.5 rather than 51
one plus the
plus
2,500.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Which I come from a state where we had a lot of salary guides and things like that, and I actually had this conversation the other day with someone where we used to, when I first started teaching in the early 90s, you would normally move up your step, right? Back then, $19,000 as a teacher from step 1. Step 2 was maybe $19,500, and then the raise would be included in that as well. I believe that's what he was saying, and so what we have the funds for, and we got some of the match money for the SOQ positions, was for Bernie's $50,000 to go up 5%. If we did it by step as well, it would be somewhat more. I don't know those exact numbers depending on the step.
So I'm still not clear, and I apologize for that, but it sounds like I'm not the only one.
So is the step does mean experience, right? Or does it not?
It counts
Years
towards
of
your
experience.
pension. Will definitely matter towards your pension. It's a year of service, the step.
Okay, thank you.
But if I'm making, so it doesn't matter what I make, it just matters what the next step is? No.
It does matter what you state. It's
What if
what you said in the
the 5%
beginning.
doesn't bring me to the minimum of the next step?
Then it's not at the minimum of the next step. It is a 5% raise for all employees. The scales are only approved for 1 year.
So you're telling me I won't go up a step if,
The steps are new each year. So you approved steps this year, they're not the steps for next year. Once the 5% goes in, then what you approve is the new pay plan. It's approved for 1 year. So this year, as he shared, it would be 5% higher. So if you went from 10 and as you explained in the beginning, if you're making this amount, you add 5% to it, that's now what that next step is.
I think comparing, as you asked for, Ms. Cass, if we had this year's with this proposed one, that would maybe make it a little more clear for you to, so we'll do that. But I would ask the board chair that we just table this because this is predicated on the budget approval that's not taking place.
That's what I was going to do, or ask to do.
And we'll have that information for the next meeting where we'll put the two next to each, side by side.
doesn't the governor have to make a decision by a certain date?
I believe it's end of June, they're not even talking about it till then, is what my understanding is, but I don't know that.
Okay. So if there's not any further discussion, we'll bring that back on the agenda and since I didn't get a motion anyway, we don't have to act on it, so, okay. Next on the agenda, ESSER and mental health support. So this is a presentation.
Yeah, we asked Dr. Wickham, she's going to do a presentation here on one of the options we had to provide these services that we think our children need, that we got information from some of our surveys, and using that ESSER's money, which is, you know, a one-time pot of money. Dr. Wickham?
So tonight, just to be clear, we're looking at a spending update for the curriculum instruction side, and then at the next meeting, we're hoping to bring back operations and facilities update. So back in October, Governor Youngkin and state education leaders, they presented a summary of our NAEP progress data for Virginia, and that data indicated that our students across the state had declines in reading and math. And so as a result, the Commitment to Virginia's Children was created, and this was a 7-step action plan to reverse the downward path of achievement. So as part of this plan, all school divisions were directed to re-engage the public in taking a look at their ESSER spending plans, and this was to be completed by December 31st. So MCPS conducted a stakeholder survey regarding ways to address learning loss using the remaining ESSER funds. We received over 800 responses, and that information is posted on our website. I want to say it was posted end of December or early January. So if you take a look at this slide, you can see our stakeholders who completed the survey. Of course, you could be across multiple categories. So in that feedback, there were multiple questions, of course, but 65% of our stakeholders favored spending funds on mental health counseling for students and families through private providers. 71% of our stakeholders favored spending to employ additional school staff to support student mental health needs. 67% of those who responded favored spending to employ 2 behavioral specialists. So as we were looking at this, we met with multiple members of the C&I leadership team. We came together, we looked at this data, we brainstormed what we might be able to do with ESSER funds to meet these needs as identified by our stakeholders. And the problem that kept coming back is that we only have ESSER funds for 1 more year. So is it fair? Can you even find someone to hire for these positions, knowing that the position would only be available for 1 more year? So rather than hire those positions, it seemed to make more sense to hire a service instead. So this service is Effective School Solutions, also known as ESS. They partner with school districts to help them implement inclusive mental health and behavioral support programs. So what we're looking at is bringing in this service to provide therapeutic mental health services through licensed professionals. They would serve at our 7 elementary schools that are identified as school-wide Title I schools. That means they have the highest poverty. They would provide the therapeutic mental health services of 7 full-time Virginia mental health professionals. 5 clinicians would be Tier 3. 1 would be Tier 2, serving 2 schools. Tier 3 clinicians, that's at 5 different schools. 1 professional would be full-time project director. This would cost $1 million from ESSER funds. From ESSER 2, we have $500,000 that needs to be spent down by the middle of September. So part of that would come from ESSER 2 and the other part from our ESSER 3. These professionals would work under the direction and supervision of ESS along with our school staff. They would be available prior to the start of the school year to help launch the program and the services. They would provide parental informational sessions. They would also provide all necessary clinical evaluations of students to ensure that they're appropriate for ESS programming. Tier 3 mental health professionals would participate in school teacher-led study skills class. They would have one mental health professional monitor one daily lunch period at each of those Tier 3 schools. They would ensure that one of their professionals, that a mental health professional, attends IEP meetings and 504 committee meetings as needed for those students who are either being served or being considered for service. They would provide up to 12 hours of professional development to staff and or to parents of students. They would provide up to 4 one-hour virtual mental health workshops for parents and families. And they would provide all the clinical and administrative services during the normal school hours, except for those extra supports for multifamily services and some individual family therapy services. So as we look back, since we've returned to school from COVID, we see that we have more and more mental health concerns. You see from the stakeholder feedback that we have a lot of concerns. Not just from our students, from our parents, from our staff. This is a real issue. We've certainly seen more concerns at the elementary level than we've ever had before. Questions? So in terms of what they're providing, this would be a program that would be parallel to those supports. So you would have to qualify to receive these services. However, because they're in the school, they are providing supports to staff as well. So there's also professional development. So they're serving the students and they're serving the staff.
How does this affect our tiered intervention specialists that we have?
So the tiered intervention specialist right now certainly would still work, again, parallel to these services, but these services are specifically for students with mental health issues. Our tiered intervention specialists, that is not their role to provide therapeutic supports to students. These are trained clinicians who can actually provide those supports.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So whenever we look for an outside company or someone, we do an RFP. Was there an RFP done to select these providers? How was that handled?
There was not an RFP done for this. Dr. Wickham and I talked about this and with the results of the survey and how best we could achieve this. This is a company that I did have familiarity with from my previous employment in New Jersey. So we contacted them and we talked about whether they provide services in Virginia, and they said that they would. We had preliminary conversations to flesh out what that might look like. And we only prefaced this conversation because we know there's a need, and the current providers that we spoke with are having trouble getting staff to meet the needs that they're providing now. So we thought this was a viable option. It's ESSER's funded money, so we could use it for the 1 year. Hopefully triage a lot of the problems that our students are experiencing now that will get better over time, and then reassess it at the end of the year.
So can you tell me a little bit about this company?
Sure. What they do, and they've been in the business for a number of years. I met them at a national superintendent's conference a few years ago. I became familiar with them actually because they work in Sayreville, where I know you have some relatives too. Yeah, I have some friends, and the superintendent is somebody that I know really well from my time in New Jersey. And while I did some work in Sayreville, while I was in Edison, I got exposed to what they were providing, the therapeutic services they were providing at elementary schools. So before I came down here in Edison, we had a similar situation with some of the mental health needs of our students weren't being met by our school counselors because they were more significant due to the pandemic and its impact. And we didn't have enough clinicians to find or locate. We contracted them in Edison before I left. I didn't get a chance to evaluate their effectiveness because I came down here December 1. But we had contracted them to do a similar service with our elementary students.
So, for our procurement processes, should we have done an RFP for this?
I don't believe for professional services is a requirement to do that. I think we could do that, but we will not get services provided for August. I keep saying September, but it's August here when we start school. Because they have to get licensed in Virginia and get all that set up, and I don't know if there'd be time to do that.
Okay, so I would like to know if, for these types of services, we should have done an
You're asking me what we should have done here. I know for professional services that we aren't required to do that, and sometimes we don't. You're asking me, should we have done this? I don't think we could have got it done in a timely manner to do this. That's my opinion at this point.
Okay, so if our process, for our procurement process, I'm asking, should we have done that? Can you give that information? Huh?
Is that a
Well,
question for you?
I'm just saying, if you get me an answer for that, if we should have done through our processes, and I believe those are state processes, that we should have done an RFP for these services.
The answer is I don't believe so, no.
Okay, well, I would like a real answer to say yes or no.
I can say that for other services, when we've provided some professional development services, for example, that cost over that, and there was, a specific organization that you were working with, we did not go through an RFP process for those services, for educational consultants, for example.
Do we have a price tag on this?
$1 million. All ESSER funds.
Okay, so it's-
And do we have an idea of what these services normally cost, and we're, at least do our due diligence to know that whatever company we're picking is offering us services that are
So,
in the proper range, I guess, is that?
so if it's a New Jersey-based company, where do the individuals who do this come from?
It's not New Jersey-based. They were working in New Jersey.
Well, I mean, I just saw their address is New Jersey, so.
Yeah, they're multi-state.
Okay.
They would be working, obviously, they'd be living and working.
But where would they, so they would come down here and, I'm just trying to understand how it works, that's all.
I believe they would hire clinicians to work in this area specifically for the Montgomery County Public Schools for that year.
So they would come down here and hire clinicians, or they would hire clinicians? Well, it makes a difference, because here's why. New Jersey is not Southwest Virginia. So I know that for a fact.
Me too.
I know. So I'm just, there's a,
The idea, we had those conversations with our point person and the contact. They would recruit and hire people specifically for the job here. Were they all living and coming from Montgomery County? I can't guarantee that because I don't know if we have enough that would be here.
I'm just wondering how they're gonna do it, if in our, I always forget the initials, in our
VCS.
CS, if they're having trouble finding people, so what makes these people think they're gonna just come down and find people? It sounds like
I think he's saying that they potentially could hire from somewhere else. They could hire from Richmond, they could hire from Northern Virginia, they could hire from a different state. I think that's maybe part of the advantage.
That's what the conversation was. I mean, obviously, that was a concern that we raised as well, is, if our local people can't provide and find these providers, how are you going to do that? And that's exactly what they said. They have a much larger recruiting network, and they would recruit people specifically for this service for this year. What does that mean for that employee for next year? They may be going, to Richmond or Hampton or wherever. I don't know that.
The point person did share that they are working with other districts in the state of Virginia, so.
Oh, they are, because I thought, I heard them say they needed to get, okay.
They'd have to get, the people would have to get certified individually in Virginia, like.
I guess, just to put my 2 cents in, I love the focus on this. I mean, this is a personal issue for me. I'm certainly happy to see us looking for ways to think outside the box on this. That's awesome. I had a lot of the same concerns just about, where these people are going to come from, if they already had a presence or not. And, I can say from experience, our VCS is already understaffed, struggling to find people in this area. And I think this group could equally struggle and maybe even cause some friction between the current folks already here working for other organizations, right? So, I'm not sure about necessarily a RFP process, but it would be interesting to have a conversation with some of the local agencies and say, if we had $1 million of ESSER money, what could you do for us, right? You're already in our schools. Would that help you attract and retain people and organizations they're already working with, right? Just as an alternative, right? As opposed to bringing in a completely outside agency that would have to hire up in this area where they don't have a presence. So, again, I love the focus, and I love everything that seems to be provided as a part of this. I'd just like to explore some local options before we made a decision.
Yeah, because this was something that has been talked about for a long time, trying to get we should be following it, then we need to know. Because that was one of the things that we found out from the previous administration with experiences there. So I want to make sure we are doing things the way they should be done.
Okay.
I would like to implore us not to wait too long. One of the things that I can tell you is that now that I have access to all of the threat assessments, it is shocking what our young people are thinking and going through right now, and we really do need these supports.
Oh, I absolutely agree, but maybe if this had been brought to the board before, to let us know this was something that administration was thinking about, then we could have given input earlier so that we could have met those needs.
We're not voting on it tonight, so I think there is
Okay.
some time to ask questions and to think about it. I had one question, if I could. I'm assuming these services will be provided across the board, across all of our schools. Is that correct? Is that
It's the seven schools.
So, okay, this is on page 9 where it says serve student. Okay, I thought this slide was a profile on ESS. So, I guess well, I guess we can talk offline. Like, I mean, I guess from what I've seen, I feel like these needs exist everywhere, right? Not just in, Title I schools. So, it'd be interesting to get the thought process on, why the disparity, I guess, in services there. But we can talk offline if it's a long answer. It's fine.
We certainly don't disagree that those needs exist everywhere. At the secondary schools, there are more supports than at the elementary schools. And so that was part of the reasoning. And again,
Oh, for elementary?
yes.
Yeah.
And again, part of the reason there too is that we are seeing some very different behaviors from our elementary students that we've not seen before. And we need to do something sooner rather than later to help the students for sure.
Okay, that helps.
This is one of the areas where, from our strategic plan and from the commitment that this board made to equity, that our equity folks should be involved in conversations when decisions are being made about what happens across the district and within different levels.
Okay, if there's no further discussion on this, so thank you for that presentation. We will move on. Middle school and high school health textbook adoption.
Is this time for questions or not?
I think,
Is
is
this
there a
time for-
is there a presentation
Presentation,
on
or is
this,
this just something coming to us?
There are some documents there that you can click on to see those links. And Kelly Sutphen, she's here as well. She's our health PE curriculum lead, and she's going to come up and answer any questions that you may have along with me.
I was just curious, and I don't think this is this working? Hello?
They are working, so we have to be close to our microphones because of how close we are to each other.
I have to, kiss my microphone, or?
We'll turn it up, and then we'll turn it back down when it starts ringing.
Okay. I have a big mouth, you can hear me anyway. So I see for the, I guess this is the high school one, the cost is, if I'm interpreting this properly, 40,000 plus. Is that just a guess? I'm plugged in, it's just, I have to get really close. Yet then for the middle school, it's $227,000. So far, I'm interpreting, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I get that the middle school, it's for all 3 grade levels, is that? Okay. But if I divide 227 by 3, I get a lot more than 40,000. So I guess my question is, why does the middle school stuff cost so much more than the high school? books?
That's a good question, and I haven't broken it down middle school versus high school. And I know we worked on a 3-year adoption and we worked on a 6-year, so I'm not sure which one we're looking at.
Looking at, I don't know, whatever I was provided.
But we're also talking digital access, so all the students would have digital access. And then we've also asked for 5 hard copies for each teacher, so that's going to increase that price as well in our middle school, because we're going to have more middle school teachers. But I think it's important that we have at least those 5 hardbacks just for those students that don't do well looking at it on their screen and have it in their hands. So that's going to be part of that price as well.
The middle school quote does say 6 years. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so that's the difference there, because we've also got the 3-year quote.
So all a 6th grader, a 7th grader, and an 8th grader use the same book?
Yes, ma'am, they will.
Okay.
And that particular book actually correlates and aligns directly with our Virginia SOLs, and they do a great job of breaking it down. So I have a spreadsheet it goes right through all the 6th grade SOLs, and it matches page numbers with each topic all the way through, and it does the same for 7th and 8th grade. So they'll use different parts of the book for different grade levels.
So the 2,200 is, quantity means 1 for every student.
Right.
1 for every student who's in middle school.
Right.
Is that just for the digital, or is that for hard copy?
No, that would be just for the digital.
Okay.
Again, we'll only have 5 hard copies per teacher in each school. And then there's probably the teacher edition as well that's going to factor in there for the cost.
Just curious, how much does the hard copy cost? Do you know?
I don't know, because we solely go with the online version. That's the way we're doing textbooks in this district, is we're doing the online versions.
Just seems like a very large investment for health books. And I was just wondering, at least in my experience in students in health class, generally they don't take health every day, right?
Correct.
So they're spread out through the year. Why do we need 1 for every student? It just seems like, isn't there a more economical way to purchase health books? We're talking, that's a lot of money, $250,000 for health textbooks. I'm not saying health isn't important, so no one please quote that in the newspaper, but I just think that I'm just trying to figure out how, that's just a lot. And I know that health is generally, students take it, at least it used to be, I don't know if it's still this way or not in the middle school, but they did it during gym. And so they would do it for like a quarter, or a period of time during, I don't know if it was a quarter or however it's done, a certain number of weeks, or maybe it was 6 weeks. So not all 2,200 students are going to be taking health at the same time.
Well, so with our middle school level, every single 6th, 7th, and 8th grader are going to take health, unless there's an underlying...
Every day?
Not every day.
Right.
But when you're looking at that cost and you're looking at those books, if we compared that to an algebra class, not every single one of those students in that school are going to take algebra in that same year. So that's a huge chunk, because you're looking at every student in the school system. And these licenses, they don't allow you to share the license so that 2 students could view the book at the same time and have access. That's just the way that the purchasing...
So I'm just wondering, maybe a hard copy book would be more economical in this particular circumstance.
So, let me see if I can answer that question and kind of make sure that I'm understanding it. You look at the 227,000 rough number, and you're paying for 2,200 seats, essentially, and that's
Correct.
across the county, right?
Correct.
So that's all of our middle schools, right? So divide by 2,200, you get $17 a seat, but that's, or sorry, it's more than that. You divide by 6 because it's 6 years, right?
Right.
It comes out to $17 a seat per year, right? Is that, so, I mean, I don't know if that's a reasonable price, or, if $10 is a more reasonable price, or 17, but certainly doing textbooks for 6 years, I mean, they used to do that, right? But then things would get ripped off.
They don't take health for more than a short, every student is an in-health,
in middle school,
but
6,
not
7, 8.
every day.
So because of the way
Maybe
that,
a third of the students are taking health at a time.
and part of that is because of our space, because we have so many PE teachers and so many gym classes that are going on at the same time. We don't have the space for every class to go and have health every single day, so we space that out. So there might be 3 classes in the gym and 3 classes in the health room, and they alternate every other day. So Tuesdays and Thursdays might be one teacher's day in health, and Monday, Wednesday is vice versa for those other classes. And our middle school has been without a textbook for a very, very long time. And we just talked about the mental health crisis that's going on. If our teachers were better suited and had these resources that they have not had in a really long time, our teachers are going to be able to educate our middle school students especially better when it comes to health and provide some of those resources that we're out searching for, and be better prepared in class. And yes, health has not lasted as long because we haven't had the resources, but now if we can get this resource, those health classes can go longer throughout the school year.
You did say the last adoption was 1999?
Well, the last textbook that we have on record, it was 2005 for middle school.
That's what I was going to say, even if it's not every day, there's still, all students are touching base with those health books.
I'm
And
just-
it teaches a whole lot of personal properties that students need, in my opinion, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug use, whether it's, I mean, there's a lot of things covered that's very important. And those are part of the things that I think we sometimes in education want to put to the side and think it's all about one certain thing. And all of these things make up a rounded form of
Like I
education.
said right in the beginning, I'm not saying
I
I'm not.
understand that, I'm just saying, I didn't say you, I didn't call your name. I just said, as a general rule, sometimes we put priorities on what's important in education, when really it takes everything to make the well-rounded form of education. You know, and health is a vital part of what students learn about themselves.
I just hope that all 2,200 of those online accesses that students have, I hope they get used very, very well, because that's a lot.
I don't know,
hear
I
you,
don't know
but
that
I
it
think
is.
there's lots of different classes. I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to both of us jump in, but I think there's lots of classes we could say that with, I guess is my point to my, you know, kind of pushing that issue is, I don't know that we're rigid on lots of other textbook adoptions is, oh, well, every book needs to get used every minute. I've heard lots of things where, yeah, that doesn't get used, the smart board gets used, or this gets used, or the iPads get used, or the Chromebooks get used, and the textbooks are sitting there. So if, you know, if we could argue that, I think we could argue that factor with all textbook adoption and purchases, so.
And if this has the same track record as the last ones in 2005, I think they're going to get used very well. And I hope it doesn't.
Okay. Any other questions? Board? So this will come back to us in the next meeting for approval. Right, so, okay, thank you.
And just because she's up here, I need to brag on her. Next spring, you should go to Eastmont and see her obstacle course for the children before they SOL test. It's amazing.
All right, thanks. Next item on the agenda is staffing update. There you go.
All right. Good evening, Chair Chewbacca, board members, and Dr. Bragan. Mr. Knott is out of town this evening, so in his absence, I'm going to be giving you an update on our current certified and classified vacancies. I just want to clarify, the presentation you see here is an updated and adjusted version to the one that was shared Thursday, so I just wanted it to reflect all of our most recent changes. As you can see, we've included changes that were addressed in the last board report on April 4th, so you can compare to where we are now. So the first slide here addresses our current certified vacancies. So as you can see, similar to where we were on April 4th, we still have 2 director vacancies. However, we are in the hiring process for both of those. That's the director of secondary as well as the director of facilities. And we still continue to have vacancies for a gifted resource teacher at CMS, reading specialists at CMS, Eastern Montgomery Elementary School, and then a split position at Auburn High School and Shawsville Middle. And then 3 special education teacher positions. So we're still continuing to accept applications for those positions. All right, moving on to our classified vacancies in our transportation department. Again, on April 4th, we had an opening for a 6.5-hour position. So that position is no longer open. However, we've had some recent resignations, and so we do currently have 3 4.5-hour positions that we're accepting applications for. We're continuing to accept applications for 2 open bus aide positions. Recently, we've had a resignation in buildings and grounds, so we've posted that position in facilities and are accepting applications. We've also had a recent resignation for a vehicle mechanic in which we are accepting applications, and we still continue to have 2 open instructional aide positions at Eastern Montgomery Elementary School. Our lunch recess aide positions at the April 4th board meeting, we reported 6 vacancies, so we've made some progress and some movement there. You can see that we now only have 2 open positions, one at Eastern Montgomery Elementary and one at Price's Fork, so we've done some hiring there. And of course, we're continuing to accept applications for those 2 open positions. We still have the lunch and the recess aide position at CES and GLE open. Eastern Montgomery Elementary School continues to have a preschool initiative aide. However, Eastern Montgomery Elementary School has filled its clerical aide position since our last report. And we do have some additional special aide positions that have recently been vacated. So there are now 3 of those that we are accepting applications for. Facilities is in the process of hiring for a carpenter locksmith position. We have filled our construction project management position, so that is filled. That was open at the last report. We're continuing to review and accept applications for HVAC technicians. In the area of custodians, as you know, this is where we see our most vacancies, and sometimes that can be our hardest to fill. April 4th, we reported 12.5 vacancies. While we have 12 right now, I will point out that there has been some change and some movement here. So for example, BHS has gone from 3.5 vacancies to 2. BMS has gone from 4 to 2. KIPS no longer has a vacancy. Auburn Elementary. We've had some vacancies open up in other schools, but I will point out that we currently have 4 candidates in the hiring process. And just in the month of May, we've had 10 applicants. So we are posting all of those positions individually, and I think that process is helping us perhaps get some more applicants. We have 1 school nurse vacancy at BHS, and then we have 1 current computer technician vacancy. So those are our vacancies, and again, those are current vacancies. These are not vacancies for the upcoming school year in which we may have, people leaving at the end of the year. These are our current ones right now. All right, and then lastly, I just want to give you a quick update on our substitute fill rate. We continue to move in a positive direction. If you'll notice, our fill rate from January to April for teachers is 93%. I don't have an average for May, but I can tell you that today our teacher fill rate was 96% for teachers, and it was a record high, I think, for aides. It was 80% today. So again, we're continuing to move in a positive direction. As I've shared with you previously, we've hired a lot of new substitutes this spring, and I think many of our student teachers who are now done with their student teaching are serving as substitutes in our buildings.
So I have another request. So I appreciate the month-to-month comparison, but with some of the positions, they have been open for a long time. Is it possible to get just a date as to when they were open so we can see this has been open for 6 months, so folks could understand how long it takes to get people into positions that are key positions? For example, the carpenter, and then we add locksmith to it. That one was open for a long time. So would that be difficult to do?
we can get you that information. So you would like to see when when the position became vacant?
Yeah, either one, just to, yeah, so.
Do our custodians get they don't get benefits, do they? They do get.
They do, yes. They're 12-month employees, they're full-time employees, they work 40 hours a week, so yes, they are eligible for benefits.
All right, any other questions, board? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Widener. All right. We do not have any items of unfinished business. Are there any items of new business, board? All right, hearing none. Anyone have any announcements or information?
Just like to say congratulations to all the seniors in our county and wish them the best in their journey, whatever path they decide to go on.
I'll also add that I have a senior graduating on Saturday, so I unfortunately will not be attending some of the other festivities because I'm up to my neck in my own, so, but congratulations to everyone. All right, upcoming school board meetings are listed on board docs. June 6th is the next meeting. And then June 20th, we will do a closed session for superintendent's evaluation. And I did want to, sorry, I'm gonna backtrack real quick, just to, back to announce something to the board that we had I thought, a fairly positive liaison meeting with a couple leadership of the Board of Supervisors, and we did express an interest, a mutual interest, I think, in doubling down on improving communication. And you know, one of the things that I threw out that I think was received pretty well, I think, was the hopes of trying to get individual board members to meet with individual board members from our board to meet with individual board members from their board, in addition to increasing the number of joint meetings that we have to try to just get some better relations and improve trust between the two boards. So I did want to let you guys know about that, and happy to discuss that in further detail if anybody wants to know more.
Chair Chewbacca, I also have an apology to make. I wanted to mention something earlier with the, I wanted to say thank you. Sure. Back earlier with the, in the discussion with the health textbook, we kind of got down the weeds pretty quickly on that. I just wanted to say thank you to our staff for doing exactly what we asked to do so quickly and advertising that. I saw it all over social media. I saw way more discussion in the community than I've seen on previous adoptions. I thought that was awesome. Cute little graphic and all the information was there. So bravo on that.
Yeah,
And I've got one too.
sure, go ahead.
I forgot it at the last.
That's all right. We're back to that.
Okay, so on, I think it was April the 25th, I believe it was, Christiansburg High School did their first inaugural Hall of Fame, and it was absolutely wonderful. There were 25 people who were inducted, and it was just amazing to listen to the accomplishments of our athletes, our coaches, athletes. It was just a wonderful thing, and the community who helped put that together, it was just amazing. I wish I could have stayed for the whole program. One of my brothers was inducted, but it was just very, very, very nice. And every year, they're going to induct 5 more people into it, but it would be nice if each of our high schools could do something like that, because it's, I mean, Olympic caliber athletes, and the contributions that some of our coaches and athletes have made, not only in this community, but in other communities, it was amazing.
Blacksburg has that. Blacksburg.
Okay.
They've had it for quite a while now.
But it was just amazing.
And they do about the same amount of inductees, 4 to 5 each year.
Good.
you. Harry, any other announcements, round two? All right, so moving on to closed session. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by section 2.2-37? I'm sorry, yeah.
Do we need to add, thank you, not that it really helps. Do we need to,
You spoke too soon.
do we need to add an additional item into our closed session? We would have to make a motion to do that in order to talk about the budget concerns. There's only one personnel item, and that's usually related to the personnel report. I'm just asking.
Your personnel report tonight includes the reorganization.
Yeah, we can't,
Okay, thank you.
can't talk about the budget and.
You know what I meant.
Yeah, no, I think we're covered, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted.
Thank you, though. Thanks. All right, so do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss two personnel matters?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson? Yes. Ms. Cass? Yes. Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. We're in closed session.